Good morning, everyone. How are you? I'm late this morning because I was telling Babel I was very cozy and comfortable in my little grandpa chair, drinking my morning coffee, and I didn't want to get up, so I'm a little bit late. That's okay. I just about finished my coffee. Sarah, Babel, Vante, welcome in. How are we doing this morning? Hello Twitch and hello YouTube. I am live on both. I know most of us are kind of hanging out here on YouTube, but if you view on Twitch, I appreciate you. I haven't used my Twitch in a while, so I'm hoping that by dual streaming I can kind of start using it again. Victoria, good morning. How are you? Welcome in. Vontae said thank you for streaming. Thank you for being here. I really am glad to see you guys here. I'm on both. Babel is being an overachiever, both on Twitch and YouTube. Why did I pick this? Oh, I need to put this away. Hold on. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. I had to charge my Fitbit, and I have to put the charger over here now. There we go. All right. So you've already seen the sketch that I did of Cyril. Which I guess I could render further if I really, really felt like it. His sketch is mostly done as far as the sketch goes. But I was thinking we could see what you guys are in the mood for, and I could submit myself to the stress of trying to sketch something on demand, which I'm usually not very good at doing. Cyril is pretty much the only character that I'm able to really draw reliably from memory. Everyone else I kind of use some sort of a reference, but Cyril, I've drawn him enough that I don't usually need to use a reference for him. This was entirely from memory. I didn't use a reference of any kind for this. And I'm just so familiar with his facial structure and so on that I usually can, even from memory, get a sketch that at least looks like him. It's recognizable as him. Versus other characters, it's a bit harder for me to do without a reference, but I will try. Depending on who you guys want me to draw, may or may not look entirely like them, but I could try. Misio says hi too. I always forget if it's Misio or Mikio. Misio looks right. Please tell Misio I love him. I'm so used to having to get my tablet pen out of a drawer, and now I have this little tablet pen holder because I was gifted a new tablet. It comes with like a little holder, like I'm a little Victorian gentleman with a quill and a little ink pot that I pluck the pen out of when I'm ready to use it. Let's see. Okay. I guess one of the things that I probably should do, so I made this sketch bigger to kind of fill in more of the empty space on this canvas, but I guess what I could do is I could just move him and just make him smaller. Let's go ahead and just put you over here. Make some room for everybody else to hang out, Cyril. Don't hog everything for yourself. His face says, I hate you so much. That is Cyril's default mood. You are correct. I'm exhausted after work on Sundays, so streams help me immensely to unwind. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. I'm glad that they can be a nice part of your routine. That's wonderful to hear. How fancy. I know, it's, though my one complaint, which I don't want to complain at all because it was a gift and it's a wonderful gift. But actually the person who gifted it to me said the same thing. The tablet itself is like this nice, trying to figure out how to describe it. Like almost like a pale mint green color. Like it's a nice color. Green's my favorite color, well, aside from teal. If you've seen a photo of my desk, you'll see a lot of green because I have a lot of plants. So they asked me what color I wanted for the tablet because I think it had like, it had green. I think I want to say that they had blue, black, which is like the standard color, and like maybe pink. I'm not entirely sure, but I saw the green one. And was like, ooh, I like the green one. Green is like one of my favorite colors. But then I said, but why does the pen not match? If the tablet is green, how come the pen isn't also green? And the little pen holder, the pen and the pen holder are still black, even though the tablet itself is green. Which, that is my one nitpick with this company. They're going to give me color options. I want everything to match, but that's okay. All right, who is next? Who should I draw? Who's gonna get? Let's stick with a portrait for now. I might do like a full body later in the stream, but for now, who's gonna get a portrait? Pick somebody for me, and I'll do my best because this is gonna be from memory. I don't want to stress out about finding references or anything like that right now. We love the horrible man, but we also love the bestest girl. Bronte. Okay, we have 2 votes for Bronte. Let's see. I actually asked, I don't think Kin is in the chat today. I'm not sure if she's available. But I asked her, whenever I was working on the sketch, I can't remember what day it was. They all blur together at this point. But I asked her, quick, should Cyril have his hair up or down? And she said down, so that's why his hair is down in the sketch. So you guys will have to decide if Bronte doesn't really necessarily wear her hair up, quote unquote, but you'll have to decide if she's going to be wearing her veil or if she's going to have her hair uncovered. So you'll have to decide. Okay, let's take 3 votes from Bronte. I apologize. Bronte is tricky for me when I draw her from memory because her face is very distinct and I'm not very good at drawing it from memory, but I will do my best. Let's go ahead and do... It's going to be bigger at first and then I'll shrink her down once she's been drawn. Already I'm not really sure what I want to do. Is he a black cat kind of person? I don't know. So, this is making me think of the fact that I'm pretty sure I ended up cutting the scene from. I know I cut. Okay, before I get ahead of myself, Cyril doesn't really, other than Adra, which is his horse. Cyril tends to think of animals as working animals rather than pets. So he doesn't necessarily that's kind of a blurry line when it comes to Adra because he cares a lot for his horse. But he tends to think of animals as working animals. So if there's like a cat, he's like, okay, well it's a barn cat, it's a mousing cat. You know, it has a function and it has a job, rather than like it's a cat and I love it because it's a cat, which is how Bronte thinks of animals. There's actually two pieces that have both of them include Bronte, but only one of them includes Cyril. Well, no, I guess technically that's not. No, okay, okay. Well, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself again. So there were two scenes that were cut from Volume 1 that included. Where's my phone? Hold on, I'm gonna make sure that I can. One of these days, I will get a second monitor for my main PC so that I can have my chat up and draw at the same time. But I'm a penny pincher, so I haven't purchased that yet. And yes, I'm going to say that I'm a penny pincher while I have 2 more mechanical keyboards incoming, and I just got 2 dolls. I'm a penny pincher in the areas where it doesn't matter, apparently. Let me just make sure that I can get my chat open here. Let's let everyone loose today. Cyril is a capitalist. So, the 2 scenes that were cut. I'm gonna put this up here. There we go. The 2 scenes that were cut, one of them was with Bronte and Cyril, and it was a really cute little scene. But it had to be cut for reasons. It was actually the whole introduction of Immolation. So chapter 1 with Cyril and Sybil on the train, arriving back at Our Beloved Lady, all of that actually was entirely different. There is an entirely different. Bronte has pointed ears. What am I doing? There's an entirely different opening sequence that exists because it was written, but it was not used. It was just not in the final product. And part of that includes a scene where Bronte is petting the horses that pull the carriage, which the carriage stayed. The carriage is still in, I mean, because that's their form of transport, so of course that would have stayed in. But Cyril tells her, don't do that. They're working, right? It's the same. In his mind, it's the same thing as you don't want to pet a service dog when a service dog is doing its job. He's like, don't pet them. They're not pets right now. They're working animals. You need to let them do their job. Which kind of just showed the way that he thinks about animals and the way that it was different for him and for her, which was really cute. But obviously that did not end up staying in the book because Bronte doesn't really come up until she's introduced separately, which I believe happens. I think that's still in chapter 2. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It might be 3. I don't know. I want to say that 2 though. Let's see. Did we decide her hair was going to be down? I think we did. Yeah, let everyone loose today. Saris's hair down. At least he has a black. He at least has a black cat's personality. I think so. Let's see. So Bronte's hair usually parts in the middle. I mean, she can kind of wear it however, but generally speaking, parts in the middle. has more texture than that, but just to give me an idea. He actually has kind of a rounder face and a rounder jaw. My cat is a grumpy and lazy behemoth who lays around on my bed all day and night. It would be me if I was a cat. I guess her shoulders should be up a little bit higher because she doesn't have. My cat brings me a mouse almost every 2 days. A very efficient hunter. The other scene that was removed was Bronte. It was Bronte and Philip, and they were hanging out in the courtyard where the bakery is. And there was a little cat, one of the church's many mousing cats. Specifically one of the barn cats. And that cat's name is Captain Von Stout. Because that was my aunt's cat's name when I was a kid. And I wanted him to be in it. Unfortunately, the scene didn't end up staying, but canonically, Captain Von Stout, the barn cat, still exists. Bronte doesn't really have that much of like a chipmunk cheek. She's really got like a very round. That's better. Trying to remember how I designed my own character challenge. Mine brings a pigeon's head to the front door like the little psychopath she is. None of our cats have ever been good hunters. We haven't had too many cats. My mom tends to prefer dogs. So we never really, I think we had a total of like two cats, maybe. But but none of them were ever very good hunters, and they were semi-outdoor cats. We bring them inside to sleep and for the winter and so on. But we did have a barn, so they liked hanging out in the barn, and they never really brought us any of their prey. So maybe they were fine hunters, but we still had mouse problems, so I don't think they were doing a very good job. I think they were just kind of spoiled. He has like a very distinct nose and lips, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do this from memory, but I don't know. We'll give it a try. She has more of like let's see. She actually has a relatively wide and kind of rounded nose. Cyril has more of a narrow and a pointier nose. There's a speck of dirt on my screen that I keep thinking is a line that I've drawn. Ugh, where's my screen cleaner? I have to get that off. Get out of there. Okay. Bronte has a pretty wide cupid's bow, I think. Where Cyril's is again a little bit more narrow. really see her teeth, but she's gonna have little teeths, so. Eyes are always tricky for me because she's got very big eyes. Her eyes are pretty wide open, and that's like the opposite of how I draw most of my characters' eyes. We'll see how it goes. And I usually only have to draw one eye with Cyril. He makes it easy. Sometimes we find 2 mice and 1 bird. A very effective hunter. Nothing like my childhood cats for sure. Kind of cute. Instead of normally her hair kind of comes in front of her face, I think it might be cute to kind of show her little pointy ear, which is very cute and doesn't really get seen very much. Kind of pull this hair kind of behind her ear. That could be cute. Means I do have to like actually draw her ear in. She's always got like some little wispy bits hanging down in front of her face, so maybe I'll do those as well. want to hear a funny thing that happened today. If it is YouTube appropriate, go for it. He's kind of the opposite of Cyril in that he has very hard lines and she has very soft lines. That is difficult. But I will do it. She deserves it. It's about my cats. A story about your cats? Go for it. Bronte is a very soft girl who I love very much, so you're not actually going to see a ton of her collarbones because they don't protrude as much. It's just kind of like the idea. It's going to be more in the shading, I think, that we'll see them. I think her ear is a little bit too high in that sketch, so I have to put it down. It's lovely already. Thank you. They're a perfect balance. You're needing to give yourself more credit. In the words of George Washington, I am too sensible of my defects. Well, I guess her head's at an angle, so maybe it's not too high. I don't know. Just go down a little bit more. Draw forward. Where did I put that line? Oh, there it is. That was easy to find. Today we had guests in the form of 3 priests and 2 friends of mine. Went outside into the garden where I found a mouse. I thought it was a decoration because there were 6 mice next to the door. Oh my goodness. My uncle came to visit my parents somewhat recently. My dad and my uncle are currently working on rebuilding a '69 Dodge Charger, which is the car that my dad had when he was in high school. So both my dad and my brother have very sentimental ties to that particular car. So they've been working on it lately, which has been really, really fun. But as my uncle was getting ready to leave, he was getting ready to drive home, and it was, you know, it's winter right now, so it's fairly dark out relatively early on. So it was already dark, and he was like getting ready to leave. He was standing kind of on the back door on the back porch, and we just hear this like scratching and scuttling noise, and we're like, what is that? There's a critter somewhere. And at first we thought, oh, it's some animal in like the bin outside, like outside of the backyard. Some animal got into the bin, like a squirrel or a possum or something like that. So both my dad and my uncle go out there, and they're like, is there anything out there? And they come back, and I had to like hold the dogs to make sure the dogs didn't like run out, because if there was a possum or something out there, we don't want the dogs to attack it or get bit or anything like that. So I'm like standing there holding these 2 dogs, and they come out like, I don't know, there wasn't anything in the bin, we didn't see it. So my dad's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go get a flashlight. And as he's going back to get a flashlight, I'm still there holding the dog, standing next to my uncle. And we hear it again, and I'm like, oh, it's not in the bin. Whatever it is inside the outdoor kitchen that my parents have. They have like this outdoor kitchen setup that has like a countertop, and there's a pizza oven and a barbecue and that kind of stuff. And whatever it was in the barbecue. Not sure where. I'm not sure if it was in like the underside or like in where the coals and everything go. But yeah, there was something in there. We never figured out what it was. My uncle just kind of took a broom and like whacked the barbecue with it, and when they opened it, there was nothing inside. So whatever it was frightened off. But yeah, so there was a little critter. I think it was a possum, but my uncle thinks it was a rat, but we're not sure. So that was our little adventure. We didn't have any dead critters. We had living critters. Erase this because it's throwing me off. Oh, easier to see what I'm doing now. Bronte has big eyes, and Cyril has very small eyes. Cyril has very small eyes, and you actually see, like, if you look at how I draw his face, you see, like, such a small percentage of his eye. You're looking at it as in, like, the entire iris, which would be, like, that. You're seeing, like, this itty-bitty little pie slice of it. Versus with Bronte, you see a lot more, because she has very open eyes. Cyril's constantly squinting like he needs a pair of sunglasses. But he doesn't. He just does that for dramatic effect. Mortified to be whacked with a broom out of my barbecue safe house. I think personally it was a possum, possibly a baby or like a juvenile possum that just doesn't really have the quote unquote street smarts yet because it's not an adult. Because I say we, my parents at their house have a backyard that's fairly large, and over a portion of that backyard they have a wooden deck. The wooden deck is about, I don't know, 2 feet off the ground, roughly, give or take, maybe a little bit more. I'm sorry, I don't know what 2 feet translates to in non-American units. I'm a filthy American, and all I know is feet and inches and Fahrenheit. But we know for a fact that underneath the deck, there's like at least like one family of possums. Like at minimum, we've got a family of possums that hang out down there. I don't think they live there, but it's one of the places that they kind of cycle through in the neighborhood. My parents live not like in the countryside, but they live out kind of in the suburbs, more rural than your standard American suburban neighborhood. They live on about an acre of property. Not a lot of people around my parents included, for a time when my sister and I were younger. But a lot of people out there own like horses, cows, ducks, sheep, etc., etc. So they're not like way, way, way out in the countryside, but it's very much a countryside-esque neighborhood. So because of that, you get a lot of critters, because there's a lot of land and like unused land between the houses, lots of tree cover, lots of tall grass, etc. So you get things like fossums? No, you get things like possums and foxes, is what I was going to say. Foxes, possums. I've seen a couple of coyotes, rats, mice. You know, you get all those little critters out there. Lots of birds as well. Because again, not super way, way, way out in the countryside, but you know, far enough out where you can start seeing some of those animals that don't really pop up in like really, really heavily gentrified suburban areas. So, which I like. My parents are the sort of people that complain about critters, but I like that they're there. It's their world too. They get to be there. I understand it's frustrating when you have critters that damage your stuff, though. I totally get that. That's frustrating. squints to make his stare look more intimidating on purpose. You know, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm sure he does a little bit of that. Let's see. I do want to tweet. Cynthia, welcome in. How are you today? Mouth a little bit. I think her mouth should be a slightly different shape. A little bit more, but we'll see. She should also have. It's very cute. Seems like a great area to live in. Wouldn't let my animals free roam unsupervised, but other than that, being one with nature is a blessing. Yeah, our family, our dogs are quite little. They're very much lap dogs. Well, every dog is a lap dog. Deep down, we all know this to be true. It doesn't matter how big the dog is. If the dog wants to sit on your lap, you let the dog sit on your lap. Um, but my mom has always been fond of smaller dogs. So their dogs are little and little enough where if there is a big hawk nearby, don't let the dog outside unless you're gonna go out there to supervise it. Um, but yeah, I mean, other than that, good. Just tired of work. Cheers. I'll drink to that. I toast to you with my coffee because I feel the same. Work has been a doozy for me lately. I'm sure it is for others as well. Today, my 11-year-old student kept getting calls from her boyfriend. Excuse me? 11 years old and has a boyfriend? Is that really how the kids are acting? Where are her parents? 11's a bit young to be having a boyfriend. I don't know. Am I just old-fashioned? That seems a bit... Is that normal where you're from? I'd think like 13 or 14 at the very youngest is like when kids start having quote unquote boyfriends and girlfriends, which we know it's not really a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You can't like go out together. You're still kids. But that's what I would expect for a kid to have like their first experience of quote unquote dating, like 13, 14 at the very youngest, but usually it's closer to like 14 or 15 is when, at least for me, I don't know, that's how it was when I was a kid, but like I think my first quote unquote girlfriend was when I was like 15-ish, give or take. And it was very much a your typical like high school or middle school. I don't know, how old are you when you're 15? Um, how old are you when you're 15? Oh my goodness, what grade are you when you're 15? Is what I meant to say. Um, you know, you're just kind of like feeling out the vague concept. You know that it's not something serious. I don't know. Maybe I'm old fashioned. I don't know. Kids these days, I thought people were waiting longer to get married. Which is it? Apparently, some of them are quite active these days. Half of a group have had experience dating whatever it may. Oh my gosh. Your first boyfriend was you were 9 or 10. Oh my, that's not a boyfriend. That's not how this works. Oh my god. That's crazy. I mean, I guess as long as the parents are involved in supervising, I don't know. That's really young. I don't know. Maybe I'm just the old-fashioned fun killer. I don't know. If my sister lets her son, my nephew, lets him start dating at 11 years old, I'm gonna throw a fit. Uh, Social media and all kinds of brain rot are ruining their child. I mean, Why do you want to, of all things? You know, I totally get when you're a little kid. So I don't tell me if you guys did this when you were kids. My sister and I did this. Um, we used to drink soda, like any kind of brown soda. It could be Coca-Cola, it could be Pepsi, whatever. Uh, we would drink any kind of like dark brown soda, and we would pretend that it was coffee, so we could pretend that we were adults. Did you guys do that when you were kids? My sister and I did that. Because I know that kids they go through like certain phases, and I think it kind of oscillates, but they go through ages where they want to behave like adults, so they'll start doing quote unquote adult things, which is actually just very cute children things like drinking brown soda, or pop, whatever you guys call it, um, and calling it coffee. Because obviously, if a like 8-year-old drinks coffee, they're gonna be like, "This is disgusting," and they're not gonna drink it. Um, but man, I just that's so I. Hmm, it sure is a world we live in. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know. Wow, I'm shocked that kids are doing that so young. That shows how much interaction I have with the kids of today. The only kid in my life right now is my sister's son, and he's a newborn. He was just born. Um, so I don't have any context. Like none of my cousins are like that age. All of my cousins are basically. I think my youngest cousin is like 16 or 17. Um, so yeah, I don't have any family member interactions with kids that are that age. How is the little one doing? He's doing well. He actually was discharged from the hospital this weekend, so he's officially home. He's out of the NICU, which is wonderful news. So we are all very, very happy, for him to go home finally. I know that obviously it's been hard on my sister to go into the NICU every day, um, but basically they were able to get him off of the CPAP first and then off of oxygen altogether. So he is breathing on his own. He's been able to eat on his own in terms of like he's able to nurse, he's able to latch, and all of that. So he's doing very well. We're all very happy, that he's pulled through, and he's gained weight, which is very good as well. He was actually originally due February 8th, so he's actually going home before his original due date, which we thought he would be in the hospital at least until his due date. So he was able to go home a little bit early, which was wonderful. I need to do her little sideburns. Where are her hair? There. There we go. Glad he's doing well. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. Yeah, my sister sent me um, a photo of him at home in his little carrier seat thing. Um, and I'm trying to remember if I ever shared this publicly. But basically, I gave her a little baby blanket because previously, for a previous Christmas, I had given my sister a blanket that looks like a giant tortilla, so it looks like a big burrito. And I gave her a little baby blanket that's a little lettuce cabbage leaf, so that he can be a little lettuce wrap and she can be a burrito. She sent me a photo of him with the baby blanket on, which was very sweet. Varys, I did do that. So, Varys, you drink the whatever, pick your brown soda of choice. For us, I think it was Pepsi. Um, yes, the little yellow and red cars. Yes, I remember that as well. I remember we didn't actually. Well, I don't know. Did we? I can't remember if my parents had one for us. I think there was a little Tykes cars. I can't remember if my family had them or my grandparents had them, but I remember my sister and I would fight for who got to be in the little car. She usually won, but I tried. I gave it a good effort. Also, I'm sorry if I missed your message. I have a multi-chat going that should show me everyone, but I'm noticing it's not including absolutely everything. So if I miss your message, I'm sorry. It's because my multi-chat isn't giving it to me. But I will try to check each individually. Let's go ahead and actually a little bit. The other half of the group is in the girls, boys are stupid. Yeah, see, that's what I think I was going through. That's the phase I was in when I was like 10 or 11 years old. It was the it was the what was that little rhyme that kids used to say on the playground? I'm trying to remember. Um oh, okay. So and I'm sure kids, well actually I'm not sure. Maybe kids still say this, but the rhyme that was constantly used to like tease people, at least at my school, was the old rhyme that I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but it's girls go to college to get more knowledge, boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. That was like the sort of thing that the kids were saying at my school when we were like 10 or 11 years old. We were like battling it out. The idea that there would be boyfriend and girlfriend is just crazy to me. That's definitely not how it was at my school. wasn't it something like girls go to Mars to get more stars or candy bars, boys go to Jupiter to get more Jupiter? There's also double double this that we used to do with our hands. I think I can actually still do that. I remember some of like the clapping and slapping games that we would play, that were usually an excuse to just hit somebody you really didn't like. um, yeah, I'm trying to remember if there were any others. So the kids at my school, oh, and the other one was pointing at somebody, and you could say it or you could or just mime it out. But if you really, this is how to prove that you really did not like somebody. You would say, "You drive me crazy," but you would just like kind of mime it out, or sometimes you could say it. But it would be like pointing at somebody for you, drive, like miming, turning the wheel of a car, pointing at yourself, and then doing the crazy signal, I don't know, symbol, whatever, where you like put your finger next to your head and move it in a circle. I just assume that everyone knows these motions and has them, and I realize that it might actually not be as universal as I'm expecting it to be. Let's see. So she would have. And then she doesn't really have pronounced collarbones because she's soft. So I probably won't do too much there. We'll see. Bronte is tricky for me because she's also very pale, and you shade pale skin differently than you would someone like Cyril who has fairly dark skin. So I have to kind of rethink my strategy. My nephew started the period of why, trying to figure out how to respond. Yep, yep. The phase every kid goes through where they need to know why everything. I remember my cousin had that phase when she was over at my parents' house when I was much younger. She was, I don't know, I don't remember exactly how old she was, but she was trying to ask why she couldn't go swimming. And it was in like January or February, so it was really, really cold. She's like, "Well, why can't I go swimming?" I'm like, "Well, because the water's really cold. It wouldn't be very fun. It would be really, really cold." And she said, "Well, why can't you just refill the water with warm water?" I'm like, "How do I explain this to a child that that's not something that's feasible to do?" Taking those chocolate spiral tubes for ice cream and pretending it's a cigarette. Oh man, I'm trying to think. Did my sister and our parents were very particular about like not letting us even think about the concept of smoking, and I'm trying to remember if we ever did. When I was not when I was little, but when I was much older, one of my school events took us to this old town district in kind of our downtown area, local to where I am. And in that said downtown area, there is, I think they're still there, there's a bunch of like joke shops and things like that. And one of the things they had was fake cigarettes. And I think they're stuffed with like maybe baby powder or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But they have some sort of powder in them where it might be like cornstarch or something. I don't even know. But if you blow into them, they puff white and it can look like smoke. So I got a bunch of those. I think I don't remember how old I was. I was a kid, but I got a bunch of those fake cigarettes, and oh man, I got my ass beaten for that. My parents were like, "That's not funny." I was like, I don't know, it seemed kind of worth it to me. Our crisscross applesauce. I remember crisscross applesauce. Spider running up your spine, cool breeze, tight squeeze. Now you've got the chilies. Used to be that you do it on their back before you say chilies. You blow. Is it blow in your ear? You barely did a lot of touching in my school. See, I remember crisscross applesauce. That's the way that they told you to sit down, like to sit with your legs crossed. We called that sitting crisscross applesauce. That's what we. I remember that specifically from kindergarten. Um, that's how they would tell us to sit. That's what when they said that they meant you have to sit with your butt on the ground, and they were very particular because they didn't want the kids. I don't really know why. Maybe it was so that everyone was kind of sitting at the same level and everyone could see. But they said you have to sit that way because they didn't want kids kneeling or like sitting on their knees. And I'm guessing they did that because they didn't want kids to be at different heights. They wanted everyone to kind of be on the floor all the way rather than one kid like standing up on their knees or something like that. That and it's also kind of I'm assuming it's a little bit more difficult to get up out of like a crisscross applesauce sit. So a kid can't like jump up and I don't know trample the other kids or something like that. I don't know. We had chocolate fake cigarettes. I don't think we had any any fake items. I'm trying to remember. Obviously, I told you about the cigarettes, but um, like other than getting like fake chocolate coins, I'm sure there's more. But the older you got, the more touching became frowned upon of the innocence of childhood. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think at least at my elementary school, I'm pretty sure by like maybe first or second grade, they're already starting to tell you like, hey, you can't touch people, you can't poke people, you have to ask them permission and all of that. They were trying to start teaching kids that when we were pretty young. So we really didn't get very many years at that school of like games where you would like touch people or slap people or do any of that. Which I don't know, maybe maybe for the best. I don't know. I would be curious to know if there are statistics for kids who grow up being taught like, hey, you need to like ask before you touch people. I think, I think, I think, I think I'm going to her a little bit so I can do some more highlighting because this is the tricky part of having a character who's very pale. It's hard to do highlights. It's very easy to do highlights on Cyril because he's so much darker, but it's harder on her. Might have to have... Might need to edit her eyelids a little bit if I want to do that, but we'll see. Fun fact, we were watching Disney's Notre Dame when my nephew saw Esmeralda, looked at me and asked why I was inside the TV. It was really difficult to explain it wasn't me. Well, it's very flattering. I agree. I mean, not me specifically, but hey, that'd be flattering. Let's see. I did not think far enough ahead to think in terms of like, ooh, what's my light source? We don't do that around these parts. We just see where the vibes take us. You know, the chocolate coins as well. To this day, I still get chocolate coins in my Christmas stocking from my parents. We have the coins for Santa Claus here. I was apparently in love with Alex Trebek from Jeopardy, according to my mom. I would shut up and stare at the screen whenever he came on. I mean, hey, you got good taste. I remember what was that show? Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune was the thing my sister and I both really liked watching. We thought that show was really fun. My dad obviously was a big Jeopardy fan. He loves a bit of trivia and just general knowledge. He was usually able to answer questions whenever they came up on Jeopardy. My sister would get bored with that. I thought it was cool, but my sister would get bored. But yeah, we had, especially in, I would say, like elementary kind of through to middle school, maybe even a little bit into high school, we had a very, not regimented, but like a very predictable schedule of in the evenings, my sister and I would, come home from school, we'd do our homework, yada yada. And by evening, when my dad was coming home, my mom would be cooking dinner, or my dad, depending. Um, so someone would be cooking dinner. Maybe my sister or I would be like called in to help with dinner. But usually the way that it played out is that we would watch Wheel of Fortune, watch Jeopardy, and then have dinner. Like that was our routine. Sometimes we'd have dinner before, sometimes after, it just depended. But that was very much like part of our normal weekday routine. which I'm pretty sure, I'm like at least 90% sure that Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy are not televised internationally. You might have heard of them, but I'm guessing that if you're from a different country, you've got different TV shows or programs that came on like for on weekdays. I don't know if you guys have game shows. I'm not sure if they're popular outside of the US. Sent a picture of the chocolate cigarettes. Okay, hold on, let me see. Oh wow, those really do, like, they actually look like proper cigarettes. I'm surprised. See, I was expecting when you said chocolate cigarettes, I was expecting like a stick of chocolate that maybe was printed with like a cigarette like on the outside, like indented into it. So it was very clearly just a stick of chocolate, but it maybe had like a little label of a cigarette or something like punched into the chocolate. But no, that's like actually a wrapped and comes in a box and everything. Wow. I'm not smart enough for Jeopardy. I have been able to answer a very small handful of questions from Jeopardy, and all of my years of watching it could only ever answer a handful of questions. We had our own version of Wheel of Fortune in the Netherlands. Oh, did you? Your dad is so knowledgeable. We have similar game shows. Yeah, my dad has a really good memory for just random bits of trivia, but specifically, he is very knowledgeable about history. That's something that he's interested in, so he retains a lot of knowledge about it. I think that his history knowledge is mostly kind of a little bit of United States history, a little bit, but mostly it's kind of general world history, like World War era. He's very knowledgeable about stuff like that, but also even just going back and further in world history. Like I could mention something about like one of like the Napoleonic Wars, and he'd be like, actually, and he'd be able to fact check me on it. So he's just very knowledgeable about that kind of stuff because that's where his interest is. Let's see. I was going to clean up a particular line. Where is it? There it is. It was called Ran van Fortun. Fortun? I'm not sure how you would pronounce that. I've, in all of our years of friendship babble, I've never actually heard you speak a lick of Dutch. I don't think. I've always heard you speak English. You've maybe said like one or two words in a stream one time, and that's it. So my concept of how you would pronounce that, I don't have one. I simply do not have one. You took after him. Yeah, I took after my dad in terms of his love of history. My sister is like a carbon copy of my mom, and I'm practically a carbon copy of my dad. All right, let's see. I do want to tweak her little eyes that I did. Where did I put them? Where are they? Where did I put my layer? Why don't I name my layers? Ah, there it is. Yeah, okay. I don't want to use that right now, so let's just get rid of that. I got pretty close. Uh, you can get a sense of it from how it's written, but I know it's not going to be perfect. Let's see. I'm going to grab this and we'll give her her hair color. Oh, that's why. Fine. There we go. I feel like I'm born to speak English. As weird as it sounds, I don't like speaking my own mother language. Oh my goodness. I lament that the only language I ever formally learned was English. I tried so hard to get my dad to teach me to speak Greek when I was a kid, but he never taught us. And then even my uncle, because I was curious, I was like, well, I don't know, doesn't your brother, my dad's brother, didn't he teach like our cousins? And I was actually talking to him when he was visiting recently, like I mentioned, with our little visitor in the barbecue. I was even asking him like, so do my cousins like, so do your two boys do they speak any Greek? And he's like, nope. So apparently they didn't learn either. They know a couple of words. They know more than I do. I know very very little. Um, but yeah, I was kind of surprised because for some reason this whole time I was under the impression that they had been taught and my sister and I hadn't. So I don't know. Guess not. My first crush from a film was Jasmine from Aladdin. And then after her, but that's only because I watched the films in a particular order. Because after her, it was Belle, and Belle is still my favorite Disney princess. But because it was the first film that I watched, my first crush was Jasmine. Still like her, but Belle wins. I knew a guy from an old guild, and he was Greek, and my goodness, his accent was to die for. I've always wondered if my dad and my uncle have a Greek accent, and I just don't hear it. My late grandfather on my dad's side, He passed away when I was very, very young, so I remember very, very little of how he sounded. But he and my grandmother on that side, both he and her made a real effort to speak to us kids, like their grandkids. They made a big effort to speak to us in English because they knew that was easier for us. So I can't remember exactly what his voice sounded like. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'd be really curious to know if my dad and my uncle have a Greek accent and I just don't hear it because I'm just so used to their voices. Kovu was your first. Kovu, shakes your hand. Kovu was a good one. My sister also was in love with Kovu. I think Memoru. I'm probably saying it wrong. From Sailor Moon, but I don't know which one came first. So either Memoru. I never got to watch Sailor Moon, unfortunately. I feel like my sister would have really liked Sailor Moon when she was a kid if she had had the chance to watch it, but we never ended up watching that. Yeah, I only know a handful of words in Greek, and Greek is a very convoluted language, both in terms of its structure and there are things that you wouldn't assume or understand unless someone explained it to you explicitly. For example, I'm able to greet someone in Greek because I learned how to do that to greet my grandmother. So I know how to say, "How are you?" And she would say, "Good." And then she would say, "How are you?" And I would also say, "Good." It was like basically, it was one phrase and one word um, to respond. And the phrase that you use to say, "How are you?" in Greek is tikanis. That's how you say, "How are you?" And the typical response to tikanis is "I'm mostly fine." That's like the polite response. It literally translates to "I'm mostly good. I'm mostly fine." And that word is kala. So you would say tikanis and you would respond kala. But if you say tikanis, that isn't actually a literal translation of "how are you?" That's not actually what you're saying. You're saying, "What are you doing?" When you say tikanis, you're actually saying, "What are you doing?" But it's used to say, "How are you?" So much so that if you try to ask someone what they're doing because they're doing something wrong or you need them to stop, and you try to say, "What are you doing?" and you say tikanis, they'll look at you and be like, "Kala, I'm fine. Why are you asking?" Because they won't know that you're trying to say, "No, what the hell are you doing?" So there's all sorts of stuff like that in Greek that you really just have to be taught, and that's beyond the language itself being more difficult. But I would still like to learn at some point, but my dad can speak Greek still. He doesn't use it very much, so he's a little bit rusty, but he can still technically speak Greek. It'd be nice to learn from him at some point. Tuxedo mask. Okay, so now see now I now I know what you're talking about. I'll just decide what I want to do with her hair on that side later. Meanwhile, apparently I have a Californian accent, and I still don't think that exists, but apparently I have one. I do notice, and it's actually kind of annoying, I do notice that I use one of the very common California words, which is like, and like is used in a lot of different ways in our, I guess for lack of a better word, a dialect that we have out here, to the point that if you're not familiar with it, it can actually make sentences difficult to understand. But I do use the word like. And usually when I use it, I think I'm using it to compare to something or to make an example of something, because that's one of the ways that it's used. But yeah, it's something that I notice that I do whenever people point out, oh, you sound Californian. I don't think I sound Californian in the way that I use certain sounds, but I do notice that I use the word like. I want to learn French. I've been obsessed since I finished Clair Obscur. I've been playing it. Oh, so to get new experience in Final Fantasy XIV, I've been playing it in the French language. That's a good idea. You know, I didn't even think of that. Because I'm currently trying to learn Spanish. And I've been thinking, what is a way that I can do something that I'm familiar with, but do it in Spanish? That's a good idea. I don't think Final Fantasy has a Spanish translation, but just an interesting thought. It's not really learning, it's just nice. They did very well with the voices. I'm not sure I'm not sure how, but Estinian got hotter in French. I noticed that some people use Spanish words because it sounds funny to them or more festive. That's weird. Why? That doesn't make any sense. I remember what word did I say? Oh, well, actually, well, for example, one of the things in my phone, my mom's contact, not actually, no, I think both my mom and my dad are in my phone as Madre and Padre. And I think, I'm trying to think, there was one particular word that I would use a lot in just casual conversation. And I'm trying to remember what that word was. It was some word in Spanish, but it was a word that was a very English, oh my goodness, a very easy translation from English to Spanish, because there are a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, I want to call them borrowed words. I don't necessarily think that's true. That's not like a really accurate term, but you can take a word in English and usually pronounce it in Spanish, and you will get pretty close to what that word is in Spanish for a lot of the vocabulary. Um, I think it was excellent. I used to say excelente instead of excellent. Oh, that's what it was. It was interesting. That's the word that I would swap out. And I don't know why I picked up that habit. I want to say that I picked up the habit from because this was about when I was like in high school or possibly college, and I want to say I had a professor that would do that. They would say interesante instead of interesting, and I for some reason I picked up that habit to the point that people would just assume that I spoke Spanish. And I'm like, one word does not mean that I speak the language. Thank you, I guess. Uh, isn't like usually a word to fill the silence and have more time to think of a proper response? I think so. It's similar to which is at least what we use, at least in American English. I'm not sure if there's another filler word in other languages. I'm sure that there must exist something to fill space when you need a pause. But yes, sometimes like is used in place of but most often, well, actually, it has a couple of different uses, but I will usually find that I use it in a context of trying to compare something or give an example. For example, if I was to say, See now that I'm trying to think of an example, I'm not going to be able to find one. If I say he was gesturing with his, this is one of the situations where you'll see it. Um, to describe something, especially if you're going to describe it in a way that is not verbal. So if I was sitting with someone and talking to them face to face, and I wanted to describe an action that I saw someone else do, instead of saying, when trying to describe, say, for example, someone waving their hands, I wouldn't say, he went like, and then, wave my hands in whatever motion I'm trying to describe. By default, I would say, he was like, and then I would wave my hands to describe the action or demonstrate the action that I was referring to. So I guess in that sense, I'm using the word like as a replacement for he was doing, or a similar kind of phrase. I don't know. It's a weird linguistic thing to try to break down. I've never had to think about it this hard. Why did my music stop? There we go. I hate that YouTube will just randomly decide to pause videos and ask me if I'm still watching. Yes, YouTube, I am still watching. Okay, let's see. I don't know if I'm going to give her color on her lips. If I'm going to make them like a pink peach color or not. I don't know. We'll see. For now, let's open her eyes. I prefer reading and watching media mostly in English as well. Oh, that's interesting. I am slowly working up the courage to um, read something in Spanish. I'm gonna try to find something that's relatively easy and also something I'm pretty familiar with. Um, Hopefully, I can find something that's, because right now I'm using I have basically a podcast and then a random YouTube channel that just has like some spoken Spanish, and that's how I'm currently trying to learn. I know eventually I need to actually be reading and speaking to someone else in Spanish to actually practice it, but I'm not quite there yet. But I don't know, hopefully with time. It would be helpful to know how to speak Spanish because we actually deal with a lot of Spanish speakers in my work, and it would be a big help if I was able to actually just interface with them without having to rely on interpreter. I can dream. I speak Spanish too. You do. I think Spanish and Italian have a lot of similarities in kind of the same way that English and Spanish have a lot of similarities, I think. That is my neophyte's interpretation, at least. I mostly struggle, which is just going to come with practice, but I mostly struggle a lot with pronunciation in Spanish. because it uses the same alphabet mostly, minus some of the accents. But there are certain um like what is you're welcome, I think? No. Wrong. No. Wait. No, it's thank you very much. That's saying muchas gracias. That's really hard for me for some reason. That phrase pronounced in that order, for some reason, those sounds are really hard for me to get out. So that's been my biggest struggle with Spanish so far, is there are just certain pronunciations that are really difficult for me for some reason. That, and also just the general memorization of everything that you have to do whenever you're learning a new language. That's also pretty tough, but we'll get there, hopefully, over time. Yes, it is. Let's see. I need to name this layer so I don't lose it. They sound similar, but not quite the same. I need to dedicate more time to improving my English language skills. I mean, me too, and I'm a native English speaker. English is such a weird language. It's got all sorts of weird rules and quirks. Not sure how big I want her needs to be for this, but there we go. Let's see. Oh, that's a little bit messy. Let's see if I can clean that up. And then we get to give her her little chiefs. Nova, hello, how are you? It's good to see you. I find English very fun with all its word building capabilities. I think even my jokes and pun land better if I use if you use English and not your native language. Oh man, I can't even begin to think about how advanced jokes can possibly be in a whole other language. I'm sure there are all sorts of shenanigans you can get up to with Greek, and I just haven't even gotten that far. Um, I'm cold, so I'm turning my heater on. One moment. Mm, Good to see you too. Doing well. Good, I'm glad to hear it. I'm doing well, just very, very busy with work. It's really running me ragged, but that's okay. Let's see. I think what I might want to do. How cold is it for you? Stay toasty. So, always a busy man. Always busy. Luckily, I haven't had to work nearly as much overtime. Um, but there's changes coming to my team and the company structure, so everything's gonna get thrown into mayhem again. So we'll see how it plays out. Let me see how cold it is today. You're gonna laugh at me because it's not actually that cold. um, I live in California, so it's usually quite warm and mild. And right now it is 16 degrees Celsius. So you may now soundly mock me for for being a weakling who can't handle the cold. It's snowing for you. Yeah, no, we don't get snow where I am. Well, I'm too low elevation, but if I drive maybe like 2.5 hours, give or take, uh, about northeast-ish of here. Excuse me. If I drive a little bit, then I run into some snow at this time of year, at least. 16 Celsius is cold. Is that plus or minus? Oh goodness, it was negative 16 Celsius for you. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I know. I'm a weakling. As soon as it's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit out, I start turning the heat on. I even have my fluffy pajama pants and my socks on. I'm as cozy as can be. 19 Celsius. Oh my goodness. I would just simply freeze to death. I would just turn into a popsicle. I actually like cold weather. I'm not dressed for it right now. I'm in my cozy indoor clothes. But I actually like going out and being out and about when it's cold weather, when I'm like actively walking around and I have like my proper boots on and everything. I prefer the cold weather, but when I'm just hunkering down here at the house, I like to be cozy. I can't stand the heat, so everything over 30 Celsius is my doom. Oh man, you would not do well with our summers here. Hold on, let me see. I have to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius again. Hold on. Our summers here usually average about 105 Fahrenheit. In Celsius, that would be between 40 and 41 Celsius. That's how hot our summers usually get on average. Sometimes a little bit hotter than that, but usually on average. Let's see. 40. Yeah, 40 Celsius. Nova says, "Yeah, I would melt." Yeah, yeah, it gets pretty brutally hot out here, especially where I am, kind of down in the valley. Things get quite warm. Um, I might tinker with giving her some color as a treat. Sure, keep it, but we'll see. Actually, I might do that. Or maybe I'm overthinking this, and I can just do it this way. I would need to. it gets up to plus 35 here. So yeah, so that's getting in the summers it gets kind of similar to us here. When is Bronte available for a cup of tea? Can promise a cute black kitty company. You'll have to check with you'll have to check with Cyril. And he might have a very very strict schedule of availability for her. Okay, so here. Oh, that's what I want. Will do. Her eyes. Jackets are not something I tend to wear. I love a good jacket. I love a good coat. Unfortunately, it gets to like 40 Celsius in the summers here, so I don't usually have a chance to wear a whole lot of like nice coats. I used to live up in the Pacific Northwest where it's much cooler year round. It's a lot more rainy, it's a lot more overcast, just in general, a lot cooler temperatures. And I really, really enjoy that. If I had the choice, that's where I would live. I would live somewhere colder like that. But all my family's here, so so I end up staying here. Let's probably want to put it up here. Let's do that. Well, Cyril can come to the tea party as well, I guess, if he has to. Lady Mara would probably love to spend some more time with them. This is true. This is true. Cyril is just part of the package deal. He just has to come along. Yeah, he just has to bodyguard some more. Proper bodyguarding. Uh-huh, exactly. He's very good at being a bodyguard. Hmm. I'll introduce her to some good men so she can escape Cyril. Cyril would take issue with that. Cyril would file a complaint. I was gonna say it's not her fault she has bad taste in men, but I mean it kinda is a little bit. I need to get to chapter 34 of potential bodyguarding content. It's not going anywhere. There's no rush. Cyril is a certified chameleon in my eyes. He plays lots of different roles. Let me see here. I'm gonna start wrapping it up because it is already 1:30, and I have a bunch of stuff that I have to do today before the work week starts, and I lose all my free time again. Let's see here. Pause this, even though I do like this playlist. I'm gonna do my obligatory fix and play. There we go. You can tell that I like Bronte more because Cyril doesn't get color. Only Bronte does. Her eyes are a little bit red. They should be more brown though. So let me see here. I'll just make a couple more tweaks to her. It's funny how I've never been an avid reader, but I dream of cozying up with something to read every day now. Oh, that's sweet. She's gorgeous. I really hope eventually she'll get that. She's just a baby. I love her very much. But that is gonna do it for me. I do have some work I have to get to with my precious limited free time. But thank you guys so much for hanging out. It was great to see everyone. I'm glad you guys could make it. I stream every other Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, usually artwork, live on both YouTube and Twitch, wherever you want to pop in. I'd love to have you. So thank you guys very much for hanging out. Nova, thank you. You're welcome. I'm so glad you could make it. It was great to see you. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I will see you next time. And I'm gonna go make a snack. I'm really hungry. I think I'm gonna go make some more coffee. I might be cheeky and have an iced coffee. He's named Cyril because my future husband, who has a problem with being an obsessive killer, was too long. Oh my goodness. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you guys had fun. It was great to see you as always. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.